Freilich and Chanukah. This is Shais Taub, and I'd like to speak to you a little bit about the special opportunities, spiritual opportunities, during these days of Chanukah. You know, there was a debate among the people of Chelm, the wise men of Chelm, as to which is more important, the sun or the moon. And they argued back and forth for many days, and finally they concluded that the moon is more important than the sun, because the sun is shining in the daytime when it's bright out anyway. But the moon is shining at night when you really need it. And every truth has a little joke, and every joke has a little truth. And there's a little, maybe not just a little, a lot of truth in this joke. The menorah that we light for Chanukah is based on the menorah that was lit in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, when the Jewish people re-entered the Holy Temple after it had been desecrated by the Hellenists. One of the things they did is light the menorah. Lighting the menorah was one of the daily rituals in the Beis Hamikdash. And as a commemoration of that, we light a menorah. The thing is that the menorah that we light, one very obvious difference is it has 8 branches, whereas the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash had 7. Another obvious difference is that the menorah that was lit in the Beis Hamikdash was lit during the daytime as part of the daily routine, and we light our menorah specifically at night. You're not allowed to light it too early. You have to, and if you do light it early, meaning like Plaga Mincha is the halachically earliest time you can light it, you have to make sure that it's going to burn into the night, because the whole point of the Chanukah menorah is to burn at night. So what is this idea of specifically shedding light at a time when it's dark? And also, how is that connected to the idea of the 8 branches as opposed to the 7? And also, just for good measure, what does this have to do with the little tiny jar of oil that was discovered when all the other all the other jugs of oil had been defiled, had been rendered ritually impure by the Hellenists? What was the significance of that? And how can we draw inspiration and strength from that idea today? Okay, so a few issues out on the table right now, right? The Chanukah menorah is based on the menorah from the Beis Hamikdash, but it has 8 branches, not 7, and we light it at night, not in the day. And what's up with the little jar of oil? So I'll tell you like this. There are 2 kinds of light, 2 ways of spreading light. One is where life is good and things are stable and we feel safe. And in that environment, in that context, we add to it. We give our unique contribution and we increase the light. And that's obviously a good way to be. It's always, like we say in Yiddish, as gut is gut, is besser, nicht besser. If things are good, they could be better. We could enhance it. And that's sort of like regular light that you bring. There's already a lot of light going on. Now you bring a little bit more light and you make things even better. But then there's another type of light. A light that you bring to a situation of darkness where there's no other light. It's dark right now. And it almost seems like it's insurmountable how intense the darkness is. And it almost seems like it's not worth even trying to shine light into that situation. And if things were normal, right, under normal conditions, if there were other lights shining, if there were other things that were healthy and functional, then I would add my health and my good functionality. But here things are crazy, like I don't even want to go near it. And what we have to know is that there is a light that has the power to take on darkness, but it's not a regular light. It's from a different place than we normally access, than we normally draw from in regular life. It's a supernatural level of light. What do I mean by that? I mean that everyone has a nature, everyone has a way of being, and if we're never really pushed and never really challenged, so we stay within our framework and we try to make the best of that. Then there are extraordinary situations. And when I say extraordinary situations, I mean unthinkable stuff that we certainly wouldn't think that this should be somebody's life story. And yet, somehow, in his infinite wisdom, God writes the story, and we say, well, how is a person going to get through this and come out intact on the other side? And the answer is, drawing upon regular, natural, normal capacities, they won't. But the good news is that we have a soul, and the soul is supernatural. It is not limited by nature. And we're not going to get through this with natural capacities. We're going to get through it with supernatural capacities. In our tradition, we describe nature as a cycle of sevens, because the world was created in 7 days. God worked for 6 days, and on the seventh he rested. The seventh day of rest is part of the completion of the work cycle. The cessation of work is also part of the work. So it's a 7-day cycle. And then after you complete that 7-day cycle, you start like any cycle, you start over again, start from the beginning. And you come back to Yom Rishon, to the first day again, and lather, rinse, repeat. You just keep going through that cycle. So the world and the natural order were created in 7 days and are continually renewed under a cycle of 7 days. 8 is one more. These amps go to 11. 8 is one more than 7. 8 is off the chart. It's beyond the cycle. 8 is a number of beyond nature. The harps in the Beis HaMikdash, in the Holy Temple, had 7 strings. When Mashiach comes, they'll have 8 strings. Why? Because we'll be beyond nature. So that's the thing. The menorah in the Beis HaMikdash had 7 branches, because when life is good, when there's a Beis HaMikdash standing, when there's light shining. So you add light, and all the light you have to add is natural light. 7 branches. 7, the natural cycle. But when the Beis HaMikdash is destroyed, and we're in exile, and Hashem's presence is in exile, and we're wandering all over the world, as we have been the past 2,000 years, and we're lighting the menorah at each Jewish house, lighting the menorah everywhere we've been in exile, whether it's Poland or Morocco or Yemen or Lithuania or America or Jamaica or China, everywhere Jews are in exile, we're lighting that menorah. And we're in a dark situation, a spiritually dark situation. Think about the exile of the Jewish people. It's full of a lot of brutality, a lot of dysfunction, a lot of trauma. And yet we keep lighting them at that menorah. But it's not enough to have a 7-branched menorah, like was enough to have when the temple was standing. No, we need an 8-branch menorah. We need to dig deeper to something that's beyond nature. Otherwise, we're not going to survive. But if we dig into that supernatural capacity of the soul, then we can do it. And not only we can survive the darkness, we can shine our light into the darkness and make the darkness light. So that's why we light the Chanukah menorah specifically when it's dark out. To show what? To show that this light, this 8-branched menorah light, this is the kind of light that can even take on the darkness. And what does this all have to do with the tiny jar of oil? Tiny jar of oil, we're told, represents the Yechidah Shebenefesh, There are different levels of the soul. There's the nefesh, which is the vitality of my behaviors. And there's the ruach, which is the life of my emotions. And there's neshama, which is the energy which vitalizes my thinking capacities. And then there's yechida. Then there's chaya, which is spirituality, altruism, selflessness. And then there's yechida. Yechida is the essence of the soul. We daven 5 times a day on Yom Kippur, because on Yom Kippur, the way that atonement works is that no matter what you did that may have affected the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, even the chaya, but the yechida is pristine and cannot be corrupted. So on Yom Kippur, we daven 5 times, representing the 5 levels of the soul, to bring out that yechida. The yechida is the part of you that no matter what happened, no matter what you did, and no matter what anyone did to you, that part of you, that essence, that core, that pintala yid, that tiny little dot of your essential identity, your core, that always remains pure. Not only it remains pure, it can't become defiled. So we're told when the Jews discovered the jar of oil in the Beis Hamikdash with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, they're looking around, everything's destroyed, everything's defiled. We're told that that's akin to a person who has experienced absolute devastation on the level of nefesh and ruach and neshama and chaya. Everything has been torn asunder. And yet he digs deep and he finds there's this tiny little jar of oil called the yechida, called that core identity, where yechida meaning yochid, oneness, unity. I am one with God. My soul is bound up with Hashem. It always was, no matter what was happening, no matter what I was going through, no matter what even I did, that part of me remained pristine and pure and innocent and holy and cannot be defiled. Cannot be, not only it wasn't defiled, it cannot be defiled. It is above defilement. And when I find that part of me that was always pure, that part of me that couldn't be hurt, because it is one with God, and it is infinite, and it is indestructible, and it is eternal, just like God is eternal. When I find that little part of me, that real part of me, that real me, then I can go out and light up even the darkest situations. So that's the lesson of Chanukah. The lesson of Chanukah is, when things are regular, it's enough to have a menorah with 7 branches. And it's enough to use the regular oil, the nefesh, the ruach, the neshama, the chaya. But when things are dark, either for the Jewish people or for you as an individual, or combination of the two, then we need the 8 branches. We need to go above nature. And we need to go to the little tiny jar of oil, the yechida shebenefesh, the essence of the soul. But if we do all of that, meaning if we look within, the answer's not out there, it's in here. If we look within, if we can get to that place, then not only can we survive, meaning preserve our own sanity and health and ability to function, but we can be influencers. We can shine a light that will transform darkness, which means that it benefits others. And I know that's sometimes hard to think of, like, I'm just trying to get by over here, I'm just trying to survive, I'm just trying to scrape by, and you're talking to me about helping others. But here's the thing, it's no more extra effort. Once you've found that little jar of oil, once you found that 8 branches, that supernatural, miraculous place within you, it's not extra effort to now be of benefit to others. There's an expression that a candle for one is a candle for 100. When you light that light, it doesn't have to work harder if there's more people in the room. It's like if you're cooking food, I got to know how many guests I'm going to have, because I have to work harder to prepare a meal for one guest. I have to work harder to prepare a meal for 100 guests than if I have one guest. But when it comes to light, you flip the light on and it doesn't work harder because there's more people in the room. And the people in the room don't make it less light. It's not like they soak up the light. Hey, you're eating up all the light with food. Yeah, that guy, he took two helpings of latkes. Now somebody else didn't get a latke. But if it's light, then everyone benefits. So what I'm telling you is that when you find that little jar of oil and you find that miraculousness within you, that infinity, that eternality, that godliness, which is indestructible and incorruptible and cannot be defiled, then not only are you able to survive, but you end up benefiting everyone around you. in a very special way, in a very unique way. And this role of the survivors, of the miraculous people, the people who were forced to find their own miraculousness, I think is a role that's going to emerge more and more in our generation, where we see that the people who have been through the most are the ones whose wisdom and guidance and example is going to be treasured by our community and by our world. So look within, find that godliness within you that was always intact and always will be. Try to identify with it. Don't identify with what happened on your nefesh level, on your ruach level, on your neshama level, even on your chaya level. Identify with what is eternal and unchanging and incorruptible about you. And live that way. And you're going to see it not only benefits you, it benefits the whole world, even in the darkest of places. A freilich and Chanukah.